Dear ladies and gentlemen, very welcome to our session on post-pandemic cities. We're discussing together with an interesting panel of speakers the scenarios for the future of our cities. It's well known how the pandemics and the COVID-19 have affected our daily lives, but they've affected very greatly the patterns of the functioning of our cities. So the deal of this conversation today, of which we're very happy to be here with Bernardo, Matteo, Giulia and Lucia, is to discuss together about what is also the role of technology, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, and what are the future perspectives on which they and their organizations are working on, and what trends do they foresee in the near future. So I myself am Daniela Patti, a planner that is dealing very much with the participatory process.
Revolutionary per se, but it is very important right now because he said that cities should be redesigned, not thinking about the fact that you can move very far and very fast from where you live, but it should be based on proximity. So you need to have everything you need within a very small distance from your place. And that's completely different with what you experience right now, because you have to travel quite far, for example, to get to work. And so we are working a lot on this concept, trying to merge this behavioral data with other data about the structure of the city to understand how it can be applied. But I guess we will come.
We'll get into this now in the discussion.
Yes.
So thanks a lot, Bernardo, also for setting a little bit also the context, as Bernardo has designed this this panel also to, exactly as he was saying, also create a discussion with other experts from around Europe, and also, you know, cluster also all the knowledge. So I would like to have a very quick round, just without getting into the details, and we will be able to get into this together. Also from Matteo, introducing yourself.
Yes, our company design and realize smart infrastructure in the cities, and now we feel that the market is completely different after the pandemic or during the pandemic period, because now all the cities and the community are beginning to redesign the city and the relation with the city in terms of structure, data, services, and so on. So we think that the challenge that today is facing is to rebuild the city with a citizen-centric approach, and probably a new urban resilient strategies is important.
Absolutely.
But when we discuss about a resilient word, we think we use often as a synonymous of climate changing, climate adaptation. In the reality, probably if we want to use this word for the city, the resilient city, we must think that a resilient city must absorb or must recover from any shock or any stress, maintaining the essential functionality and the essential identity.
So thanks, Matteo, because I think this also, you raised already some of the interesting aspects that need to be discussing in the panel.
An aspect that is for daily, for any of us that we want now have a different relation with our cities, also because in the complex ecosystem that now we live, every one of us use the smartphone, the mobile device, smart home. So the technology could help us to manage this transformation, but it's important to consider that the transformation is not an easy process, and includes key challenges for anyone, because when we discuss about the transformation of a city, we discuss about interoperability between different systems, stakeholders with different interests in conflict, usually. We need a different skill, professional skill, to provide new services. We have a problem as security and digital impact, and so on.
And so on. And I would absolutely say that we can go into more this also with Lucia and Julia
Yes,
soon. Absolutely. So I would like to also get now in this intermodal digital and live presence, also get into the conversation. Also, Lucia, please, would you like to also say to who's listening to us, introduce yourself and your work, please?
Yes, thank you, Daniela. Thank you for having me. My name is Lucia Dahan. I have a double career. I work as a product designer at Facebook, specializing in augmented reality. And at the same time, I also have and run a studio that does architecture and exhibition and installation work, through which I try to address some of the most important and I believe pressing issues that technology brings to the urban environment and living environment today. That would be the short introduction.
Thank you, Lucian. We'll absolutely get into more details now. And I would like to ask Julia also to introduce herself.
Hi, thank you very much to invite me today. Well, I'm Giulia Lucertini and I'm a researcher at UAV University of Venice. I'm an architect and urban planner, and I work in a climate change lab in my university, and we work especially with the relation that the city have with climate change impact. So we work imaging and designing some measure policies and plan in order to adapt the cities to climate change. Then I work especially in the relationship between rural areas and natural ecosystem with the cities. And in the last year, we work a lot also with circular economy, urban metabolism, and the relation that this new logic how this new logic can impact with the city planning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia. So as we can see, this is the interesting point that we have together today, is the fact that we have very different speakers coming from different perspectives, as well as different regions and different professionalities. So this is, in this time that we have together, the pleasure that we have of bringing these perspectives together in thinking about what is the post-pandemic scenario. So I would like to ask Bernardo at this point, what are the major changes that you see, and what do you think would be, this, in short, the effects? Now, I know this is a huge question, so in a couple of minutes, what would you say are the main highlights on which that we could use as a basis for our discussion?
Okay, well, I think COVID-19 actually opened many new scenarios for cities, because we knew that problems were there somehow, but we were not addressing them. For example, it was evident that we didn't need to commute that much to do all the activities we needed to do. We could do it remotely, or for example, many things that we buy, we can actually order and adapt them sent home. But this was just not something that people just didn't do, and they didn't know they could. And so you had, these crowded areas, a lot of stress of people trying to go from one point to another. And but then now this is changing a little bit, okay? And so the scenario I foresee is that people will like to have a different standard of living in the future. They would like to have more security from, healthcare point of view, which is very important. And they would like to have accessibility to everything they need, and they want more easily. Because of course, if another crisis happens, and if you are in an unfortunate area of the city, for example, and you cannot move, you want all the things that you need and care for to be there and to be accessible for you. And I also think that technology will have a major role in this, because it is even hard for people to understand what is it in their neighborhood, what is it easily accessible to them. And so the role of technology is not just to monitor what is there, it's also to provide them information and to manage their behavior somehow in an intelligent way. And I think we are getting there somehow with all the paradigms that have been proposed, and the way in which the concept of smart cities is moving towards. And there is also one small other thing that I would like to add here, because I was just talking about the citizen's perspective. But from the planning point of view, the point of view of urban planners, we've been able to collaborate with them a lot during the last pandemic, and we were able to see what are their needs. So they need an efficient way to monitor and to manage the city during crisis. And this can just come from the use of new technologies that they are not new at this point, but of course there is pervasive use of GPS tracks and mobile phones, as Matteo was talking about before. For example, and this is a very interesting tool to use for them, which is not yet in their practice. They are not at the stage of development where they can use it easily for taking decisions during the normal or extraordinary activities like the pandemic, for example. And well, that's it. I think that there are more other things, but I guess Matteo can explain them even more. And
our guests, absolutely. Yeah. And so, actually, what I think is interesting also about what Bernardo was saying is also highlighting, on the one hand, what is the role of citizens in this, and on the other hand, also highlighting how the different technologies that are available, to some extent, have also been used very differently and could have different potentials in the post-pandemic. So what I would like to ask, and this I would pose the question firstly to Lucia, but if anybody else also would like to add, is what do you see that will be actually the main effects that are coming from these changes that Bernardo also outlined?
Well, most importantly, I think we're seeing a great acceleration in the digitalization process of institutions, education, and the workplace. So institutions like bureaucratic institutions, government institutions that in the past had a very hard time adapting to technology, establishing processes that would be remote or that could be 100% accessible through the internet, have now been forced through the crisis to actually get up to speed and make it possible, in any way possible. We saw this in universities, we saw this in schools. So I think during these months, there has been a great leap forward in the digitalization of many of the city intellectual infrastructure. At the same time, I think that that is only going to continue. But I think that there are two other things that I think are less obvious or more under the surface, but that I believe have changed the mind of people and citizens very much during these months. And it's two of them. The first one, I would say, is remote presence. We've all become much more accustomed to the idea of being present from another place, just like in this panel, which was a more rare thing to do before. And this has become really pervasive. And I think it has also had an influence on how people think about presence and how they think about presenting themselves digitally and meeting with others. There have been friends meeting with other friends online, doing video calls. Video calls have become not anymore a thing of a workplace or just a professional context, but also something that you develop friendships with. So that would be one thing, is people getting used to remote presence. And another thing that is interesting to me is how many people have opened up their homes to the digital, in the sense that the home has been captured in Zoom calls such as this one. This means that people have become much more open to having their home be a public space. So in a sense, the boundaries between public space and private space have blurred very much because many people couldn't go out in the city into the public space. So we have turned our private spaces into more public spaces. And I think that these two mind shifts are going to be very influential in how technologies such as augmented reality will influence the world in the future.
Thank you, Lucia, very, very much, because I think this brings some very interesting dimensions about what is the individual dimension of the effects of the pandemic, and also how this affects also the urban scale, because obviously the private space becoming public is opening also very, very much discussions about what are the boundaries of public space and what are the urban patterns also in the mobility of all this. So my question to Giulia is, given that a lot of your work is concerning also the analysis of urban patterns, and how this is affected also in the planning procedures. My question to you is also some of the outlines of what Bernardo and Lucia already outlined. How do you think this will affect actually the planning practices and the strategies at urban level? How do you think this is actually being sort of taken on board from the decision makers at the city level?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for this question, and to Lucia, because she really introduced very well my idea, because I think that I believe that the crisis generated by COVID-19 show us a new perspective of the urban public space. I think that the crisis will change significantly our urban spacing experience. We see now that when the crisis ends, we experience the reappropriation of public space, like squares, streets, and that has taken place in recent months due to the impossibility to stay indoors. So maybe now we can see that public space is our space. So people really want to stay in some space that before was seen maybe just for mobility. So we need a new kind of design of the space, and occupy streets, square, and areas previously intended for mobility with the table, chair, and other furniture, other facilities that people take from his house and just put out the door, is a new, really new way to see the city. So I think that administration and also people that have to take some decisions for cities have to really understand that people want to live outdoor in another way. So just we can see that people don't. Private house is an outdoor now, like Lucia tell us, but we have to understand that also the real outdoor is our private space. I don't know if I explain.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So my question now to Matteo was, we've been talking about all these technologies and how they affect both the private and the public space in the city. So there's been a long discussions over the decades about smart cities and so on. So how do you imagine that this is actually what we're living now is going towards the smart cities, and what are the aspects on which we should concentrate the most and points of attention maybe?
But I think that the smart city, to make our city smarter and fit for the future, it's important to guarantee the extension of a digital infrastructure. For this reason, we think that it's possible currently to provide new smart pole, new technology that is possible to install on the urban infrastructure, that for the capillarity that they have are important to support the spread of the sensor of the urban cities. So for this reason, in urban territories, sorry. For this reason, we think that and the experience in Rome is a reference, a concrete reference on that. It's possible to transform our urban infrastructure with the smart infrastructure, with smart poles for street light, smart poles for traffic light, smart bus stop, all elements and components that are able to collect the data and to generate also services, provide services to the citizen. All this is possible when we discuss, we think the cities, as I say before, with a new approach, with the approach with the citizen-centric approach, that it's possible to coordinate all the needs and provide the new services in this new scenario. And I think that artificial intelligence will be a significant role in this scenario, because when we live in the new ecosystem, digital ecosystem, it's important to share the information, to combine the information and the data with the contextual data. But last but not least, it's important to analyze in real time to provide the services. For this reason, the artificial intelligence, and now in this stand and this Faire, we see the concrete application of artificial intelligence, I think will be a significant role.
Thanks a lot, Matteo, for highlighting this. So all of you have concentrated very much on the potentialities of all of this, and this is very interesting. We see that there could be a lot of possible positive change happening. Now, not to be destructive, but what are the negative aspects that you foresee? What are the points of attention? What are the criticalities? And this is actually open mic at this point to all of your 4 guests to highlight some of the aspects that you think we should pose specific attention towards in terms of something that we do not want to go towards and that we risk of going towards instead, exactly in this phase. So I would maybe first, and this is open to everybody, so I don't know if anybody would like to start. I see Matteo is ready with the microphone, so go ahead.
As you prefer, only because I have the microphone. No, but I think that the negative impact is that now we must manage the transformation. The transformation process is before it's very, very complex. And there are enclosed key challenges, because when we discuss about smart cities, we must consider that many systems must be interoperable. We have a problem with the compliance with the regulation. We need new professional skills. We have an important problem that is the problem that we live daily on the privacy, on the data, the digital, the security, and the digital security. So many issues that now it's important to analyze, and that on that we need to have a response. Last but not least on this, that it's important that we have usually stakeholders with different interests that are on the same table. And so to take a decision, the final decision is always complex.
Okay, thanks a lot. Also, Lucia and Giulia, would you like to maybe have a quick feedback on this? I see Lucia nodding. Go ahead.
Yes, I love to say that everybody who works in technology today and in smart cities, such as everybody in this panel, we all share a great responsibility for the future. I think that we are at a foundational moment. Like, we are inventing things that will stay in place for a long time. And I also like to quote Marshall McLuhan when he was saying that the medium is the message. And what he meant by that is that we create technology and tools, and then those tools and that technology shape us back as a civilization, and as human beings, and our built environment and everything else. Just our culture is permeated by the effects of the tools that we create in order to transform it. And so some of the things that we embed in technology today may have unexpected ramifications in the future. I've heard in this panel a lot of talk about AI and data collection in the city. We all know that AI poses existential risks. We also, I think, are aware of the dangers of collecting too much private information about people, collecting too much information about the city, living in a hyper-vigilant state that can be government controlled. In the end, there is a question of, if we're gathering all that data, who does this data belong to, and who is in control of it in order to gain from it, and what can they gain from it? Apart from data, I think we're also at a very foundational moment for virtual space, which is the part of the discipline that I work on. and that will have really a great impact on how we perceive spaces and public spaces when they are interlaced with metaverse content, with virtual and artificial space. And the methodologies and the models for ownership, for sharing, things like interoperability, which I also heard Matteo speak about, these are principles that will stay within technology for a long time. So I think that we really have a lot of responsibility in shaping that future with the foundations we are laying today.
Thank you very much. I would pass the mic back to Bernardo to get feedback from him as well.
Oh yeah, actually, I do agree with Lucia when she says that technology actually shapes our behavior, and shapes the way in which we live every day. Actually, I also have another question for her afterwards, with if I may. So I would like to start just by saying that my take on the risks that we might be experiencing after COVID-19 are not only technology related, but also the social part of cities can be highly impacted by the recent crisis. For example, as I say, I am also on the scientific side, so we're very interested in making theories about cities, understanding theories from mathematical and analytical point of view. And what's well known nowadays about these quantities about cities, that there are like pumps of economic inequality, for example. So if you go to live in a city and you are in the lowest deciles of wage, your relative poverty is higher than if you were living in a rural area, for example. And COVID-19 could be, and the practices that will be put in, that will be taken to manage cities afterwards, could actually worsen this inequality pump process. For example, if I talked about before about the fact that we want people to live more in their neighborhoods. All that could enhance segregation, for example. And segregation, it will enhance again inequalities. So Lucia was talking about the fact that we can use new technologies like VR, which is, I think it's amazing. It's something that opens really new ways in which we can perceive the city. But then again, will it be open for everyone, or it will make just very better technological neighborhoods for someone, while some others, which are still important in the city, for example, in the suburbs, will they be able to experience this technology as well? So this is a very huge question for me, and something I really care about. And so going back to VR for Lucia, and I know that you worked a lot and using it to help architects to design interiors, the inside of the houses. Do you think this technology can be used also to design neighborhoods? And in this kind of collective processes that we are talking about at the beginning. So my question for you is this, and because I really don't know anything about the topic, just vague ideas, and I hope you can, expand my horizons on this. Yeah.
So if Lucia agrees, I would first get to Giulia to also get some feedbacks on the risk, because I could see on various points she was nodding, and then I would pass on the mic to Lucia to also get back to Bernardo's question. So Giulia, please let us know what your impression is about what the risks are. So let's not all talk about only the glittery pink side of things, but what do we have to pose attention towards?
Yes, I have to say thank you, Bernardo, because you anticipate some of what I want to say, because I think that now, like architect, but like urban planner, we have to take care by social aspects, because the crisis has exacerbated social division, creating a greater gap between the very rich and very poor in the city. And this is also a special issue in the city. Because as you say, the rich people will live in beautiful neighborhoods with big apartments, so we can work and have and spend time on leisure in house, and they have a neighborhood with green areas and services reachable in 15 minutes. But at the same time, we have the pure ones that would be forced to move in other area without clean area, without services, maybe with small apartments, because we know that our cities are the structure and form of our city is difficult to change, especially in Italy, like Venice, or maybe in Europe too. So we know that the structure of the city is that. So we have the risk to produce a new way of gentrification. So the economic impact could be very positive for someone, and someone other could be very bad. Maybe for the majority could be very bad. So I think that data in this case must be used to understand these difficulties, these social difficulties, and must be used to re-equilibrate, rebalance some of these force that move people in some place and work maybe in another place, because we know that a lot of work are impossible to become smart work. So we have to consider also that, and I think that the data and all the big data that we can collect and analyze in the city and the movement of people making these mounts could be very useful to redesign a social city.
Thank you very much, Giulia. So I think this is very interesting, and we'll get back to this about what are the issues in social dimension, social impacts, but as well as security and ownership and economic impacts. But before this, I would like to pass the mic back to Lucia to answer to Bernardo's question.
Yes, Bernardo, you were asking about the possibilities in augmented reality to design not just interiors and influence not just interiors, but also public spaces and neighborhoods. I think that the potential of AR for this is really big, and in fact, probably bigger than that for interiors. Some of the first manifestations of what we call persistent augmented reality, which is augmented reality that lives anchored to a space, is in the augmentation of monuments. So areas of the city that are deemed static in time and that are like nodes of attraction for people. And then creators of augmented reality can produce content that lives on top of these monuments. Now, this is convenient, of course, from a technological point of view. It's one of the first things that we, in the sense of everyone who's working in AR today, has been able to put forward. But it also leaves questions that you were addressing before, Bernardo, such as what happens in rural areas that do not have access to monuments. How are these monuments chosen? And I think that these questions are very, very important to address, and in order to build technology that has a social component to it.
Thank you, Lucia. Thank you very much. I think that's interesting also, given that we are in Rome also. This is something that's been discussed and to some extent experimented also, how augmented reality could also be something that enters also in the also the touristic and the promotion of the city. So we'll get to discuss about this. But before this, I'd like to get back to the challenges that you posed in terms of definitely social inclusion and the digital gap that there might be in certain regions of our countries, in certain parts of our cities, but also in some socioeconomic groups, as well as also the aspects of the data ownership, which is a very, very big issue. So my question would be, starting from Matteo, but obviously then open to anybody who would like to add, this is very much connected to what is the business model at the basis of the technology. So what business model do you see that are going towards actually avoiding the risks that we are talking about and being actually a possibility for developing those, whether we want to call them smart cities or anyway, cities that are enabled by the use of technology in a more socially and inclusive way?
But before to answer this question, it's important to remember that now, following the pandemic, important investment and stimulus packages are rolled out in the world, around the world. So this means that now there are also the conditions to receive public resources to regenerate the cities. But the smart cities required important investment, and the high proposition is daunting for any city. For this reason, it is important to define the appropriate business model, consider the revenue earning potential, and on the other hand, the expended capex expended involved. But we think that the business model are able, are concrete. We already used this business model on several cities where we have put in place our initiatives, and all the revenues that can manage the business model and the revenue stream that is possible to generate depending from the digital services that you can provide. For example, the video analysis, the energy saving, the monitoring of the quality of air, the people counting for the bus stop, the marketing proximity, the recharging system. So several services that could generate revenues. For this reason, we think that currently there are business models that can sustain the smart cities development in accordance also with the utilization of the public resources. In synthesis, I say that currently it's important to take in consideration as we already made in some cities, the public-private partnership model, that it's a relation that you can define, you can build with the local administration for a long period that coverage the capex and the revenues that you can generate. The real benefit of this solution, this model, is that it's possible to have the serviceable of the infrastructure. The infrastructure are always maintenance, with maintenance in operation, because it's important to manage always the infrastructure to generate the revenues and to maintain the quality. And so this could be an important result also for the citizen that have always the urban infrastructure updated. So the solution also from the business model probably today there are.
Okay, well, thanks, Matteo. I think what is very interesting, and this is definitely a very big discussion in Italy at this stage, is that with the funds of the Next Generation EU, a very big amount of money will be invested towards digitalization. So a very big discussion at the moment, just as Matteo also was rising, and it's in the moment in which there will be a large public investment. Public-private partnership will be one of the ways forward, but how much is the public administration going to be able to guide in the public interest this investment towards digitalization, especially if we want to make sure that we're also ensuring social inclusion and so on. So I would like to also raise, because this is one of the ways to go forward in implementing what are the positive potentialities that we see. Just as Matteo was saying, and I would like to raise also to the other panelists also to give some feedback around this.
Okay. Well, so about you again about business models and how you can use fund to increase the digitalization. Well, well, as I was mentioned before, I think that. The pervasiveness of these technologies that it will be increasing in the next years, and I think that I can't stop thinking about. Yeah, okay, sorry. I can't stop thinking about the fact that well, not being an expert in business models or how to use this technology to make money in general, I always shift to the point in which how can you use to understand better how the citizens and the city works. It's a bit unrelated, but every time we push forward technology in our everyday life, a new technology, and it enters our lives and it makes changes in what we do, then we gather data on that. And that's a huge boost for science and understanding of individual behaviors. So as from one side, there will be a lot of money involved and a lot of new business models emerging. What? Yeah, okay. And a lot of new business models emerging. Like they want, like for example, smart sensors, smart parking, VR, augmented reality, etc. And as people will be using that, we will also understand the way in which they perceive the city and what they do, and this will be a huge boost for scientific discovery as well. So there's money on one side, but on the other side, there is the fact that also our knowledge will be increased. And this will, in turn, bring new technologies on the table, I guess. Yeah.
Thanks, Bernardo. So I would go to our digital panelists and ask also Julia and Lucia whether you would like to also add on to what Matteo and Bernardo were mentioning about what is the economic and business model dimension all of this, and what trends do you see?
Okay, maybe I want just to add something, especially related to the question of the big amount of money that arrived now in the next generation EU and also in other parts of Europe. Well, we work a lot with the public administration, local public administration, and they have a huge need of data in order to organize better their cities, understand social problem, link together different things. But the problem is that there is a very big lack of knowledge in this kind of administration. So many times we have data, but they are not able to use it. So I hope, and I suppose, and I really hope that in the next future also to improve knowledge about data, we have to improve the knowledge people that work in the administration and overcome sector division, because in my opinion, in our work every day, the big problem is overcome this kind of division. So if we have data, many times we can use data from the urban sector with the social sectors. So this is a very huge problem, and also because proper privacy or other kind of problem, people that don't speak the same languages and so on. So I really hope that this new opportunity help us to overcome this big gap.
Thanks, Julia. And I would pass the microphone also now over to Lucia to also get some input from your side.
Sure, thank you. I think that the increasing digitalization and increasing collection of data shouldn't be a goal in itself, unless there is a good business model behind that. Like, how do we monetize that data? Is it just in advertising? That is one very big way of monetizing data today, and I think it shouldn't be the only one. I think that for technologies such as augmented reality, they are being led by private companies at the moment, and this is a given. We cannot shift responsibility for developing AR and doing research in AR entirely to public institutions. And so these private companies do have some sort of responsibility for understanding what are sustainable and socially conscious ways of developing this technology in a sustainable way in the future that is also monetizable and that has a good business model and an ethical business model behind them. In augmented reality in particular, one thing that comes to mind is the concept of augmented reality as infrastructure. So something like the metaverse, which is the idea that there will be a parallel, entirely virtual layer of content overlaid on the real world, and that we will all have avatars that can explore this content or that we will see it surfacing in front of our eyes through augmented reality technologies, this world, we can perceive it as infrastructure because it is public space. And then that means that the people who are developing businesses inside of this metaverse and in this model, they would need to comply with social rules created with all the actors, and in compliance with whoever regulates this, which I think is something that governments should do. So these are extremely difficult questions, and they also touch on an aspect of standardization. I'm also a member of the British Board for Standardization in Immersive Technologies, and I think it is very important also to start thinking about how do we make these platforms have rules that actually allow many people and many different actors to play a role in them, so that they are not owned by only one company that has one business model that may be not sustainable in the future, or not something that's for the greater good.
Thank you, Lucia, very much, and thank you all for showing us some of the potentialities and some of the criticalities and how we could get over them. And at this point, as we're getting towards the end of this very interesting chat that we had together this afternoon, I would like to ask you all what, in very briefly outlined to us in this closing of the discussion, what are you and your organization going to be focusing on and addressing and developing, or the post-pandemic cities from a technological point of view, addressing and trying to take into consideration all that we said today. So I would like to ask Matteo, what are your plans?
But I think that the focus will be to upgrade the urban infrastructure. That is a terms that we use, that are used from all the panelists. Our initiatives with Sony are in this direction, because we're using in Rome, in another place, the IMX500 imaging sensors that is with the artificial intelligence functionality, and this means to spread the sensor on the city, in the street light lamps, in the traffic light poles, in the bus stop of the transportation, public transportation. This generates the opportunity to collect the data that we can use, as I said before, Lucy, for the business model to generate revenue stream. And it's important that to manage in an integrated way this data, because when we have a decision to take for related to citizen, it's important to know what happened in real time. And so the artificial intelligence, we have some activity in place with the Sony Labs. The artificial intelligence are mandatory on this. Will be, for the artificial intelligence, will be an important role in this new scenario, and a scenario with which we have the city efficient, sustainable, resilient, safe, but it's important, human-centered.
Thank you, Matteo. So I would like to ask Giulia, from your perspective and your organization, what are the next steps?
Well, for our organization, for our lab, the next step is really understanding which way natural resource and material flow, energy work in these new spaces, in these new cities. So understand in which way people move and materials move, energy moves, become very essential to redesign the city and to support administration to understand in which way they can give. And especially from our perspective, because we work a lot with climate change, understand where the city is vulnerable. So understand what are the real vulnerabilities and work to mitigate this vulnerability.
Thank you, Giulia. So, and Lucia, can you tell us from your perspective, what are the next steps from your and your organization point of view?
There is a very, very long runway ahead for augmented reality technology to still develop and to we need to figure out how it's going to integrate with the physical world, how people are going to interact with virtual worlds. There are many, many questions that we're trying to answer at the moment, and I'm just excited for the future. We're just trying to focus and continue answering those questions in the most ethical and exciting for the future manner.
Thank you.
Oh, well, since I'm the last one, I have to say that the contribution that Sony CSL will give to the development of the cities in the future are mainly twofold. So from one side, we hope that we'll be able to develop technologies that will be applied on the field. So really in cities right now, like the collaboration we have in Matteo, for example, but also any others to support the decision making, for example. And from the other hand, we hope that we can keep on to provide scientific insights in how cities behave and how citizens behave, so to make new scientific discoveries, mathematical models, and new ways to analyze the data that we gather. So I guess these will be the two contributions that we'll be given in the future. And so I guess that's it. We are at the end of the panel, and I want to thank you all for taking part and have accepted to be here. I think we covered a lot of different and very diverse points concerning cities nowadays. We started from the problems that COVID-19 raised, which are economic, sociological, but also technological, because we need new technologies to deal with it. And as we touch some of these different topics, we see that they're expanding into other branches, and they are all interrelated. So technology is related with the social aspects, but also with privacy and with the way in which technology is regulated. So I guess the take-home message that we can take here today is that all these aspects cannot be tackled by themselves. There must be a more holistic view, because cities and all problems related with cities are highly interrelated. So each aspect that you try to tackle will also move the strings of all the others. And I guess today we give a very nice broad perspective on this, not just from scientific or just opinionistic point of view, but also from the business model point of view, which are very interesting, are at the core of the way in which you manage cities nowadays. So, well, that's it, I guess, and I give it back to your word if you want to.
Well, I would first say thank you so much to everybody, all to our panelists, and to who's been watching us and following us both live here in the room and from home, because it's been a very interesting discussion. And we hope to not only be able to implement, and very soon, maybe next year at the next Maker Faire, be able to discuss about new advancement and how we manage to improve our cities through the use of technology in an inclusive and equal way. So thank you very much to all. And see you very soon. Thank you. Bye.
Maybe in person.
Hopefully in person, exactly. Despite the use of technologies, we do still like being all in person. So we hope to be all having a coffee together, also with Julia and Lucia next time. And I think probably this is what we will be up to soon anyway. So thank you very much and goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.